Well, Seattle hockey fans, it didn't take long for Minnesota to take command of the game. Literally, it didn't take long.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, and some Kraken crap went down last night. The Minnesota Wilds were able to take care of the Seattle Kraken 4-0. And, there are definitely some numbers that I want to go over from Allison Lukan's an instant analysis. I want to talk about what Philipp Grubauer was able to do. But first, let's actually hear from Zaiem Beg, who was able to record a reaction immediately following the game where the Seattle Kraken again fall to the Minnesota Wilds.
The Seattle Kraken lose a disappointing game to the Minnesota Wild. The whole game, and really all you need to know, happened in the first 5 minutes of the game when the Kraken completely forgot their defensive structure and they let Minnesota score 3 goals on 3 premium shots in the span of 1 minute and 47 seconds. After that, the Kraken played pretty well. Other than the 1 minute and 47 seconds, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Seattle did give up an empty net goal at the end to make the final score 4-0. Seattle is now 0-11 on their second game of back-to-backs, and this is their 7th shutout of the season. Chandler Stevenson left the game at the end of the second period with an undisclosed injury, and Coach Bylsma would not elaborate on the injury after the game, saying, quote, "I'm not going to tell you what happened," end quote. The work must be mysterious and important. With Chandler Stevenson out, Shane Wright ended up getting a lot of ice time. In fact, he got 19 minutes and 54 seconds, the most of any Kraken forward, and a career high in minutes for Shane Wright.
So there you go. Not a great performance by the Seattle Kraken. And I think, again, it's the defensive breakdowns that, grind my gears, burn my grits, all of those things. And we see it again in this game. If we look at the instant analysis, we also saw that the shots on goal, while the shots on goal for the Seattle Kraken did favor the Seattle Kraken, 34-28. The shot quality was in favor of Minnesota, 3.1 comparative to 2.3 for the Seattle Kraken. And Vince Dunn led shot attempts for the Seattle Kraken. More turnover chances for Minnesota at 9 than the Seattle Kraken at 4. High danger chances, and you heard Zaiem talk about that a little bit, 12-5. You have to get more shots. We've talked about that, but also the Seattle Kraken, the shot quality is concerning again. Entry denial, 50% for Minnesota to 36% for the Seattle Kraken. And I mean, that's 5-on-5 defense stats that we're talking there. Neither team able to convert on the power play. Philipp Grubauer got the start. This is considered a quality start for him. 24 of 27 shots that he faced pushed aside, 34 of 34 on the other side of things. And, I want to talk about Philipp Grubauer in the coming segment. We've been there, done that with the Seattle Kraken team. When we heard from Dan Bylsma after the game, he talked about how the Seattle Kraken they weren't doing things that they've been able to do in this last stretch. So this was a return to some of the Kraken crap, as I sometimes say, and I hate to see. But we know that this team has struggled with inconsistency, thought we were perhaps seeing a turning of the page But that didn't happen. It didn't happen that way. And the Seattle Kraken got. Still looking for a win in a back-to-back. And, just I don't know where the stamina has gone wrong with this team. Is it mental fortitude? Is it physical? Yeah, sure. Back-to-backs are difficult, but the Seattle Kraken are far from the only team that has to deal with them, right? The Seattle Kraken outshot Minnesota in the first frame 14-10. But as they say, Minnesota was able to win the battle where it counted. Win the battle where it counted in a big way. They also take the series because Seattle took the first game 5-4. That was back in October. Minnesota won 4-3 earlier this month. And then we saw what happened last night. We talk about the minute 47, but the Minnesota Wild scored consecutive goals in 30 seconds. So Gustafsson was solid. There were shots that Gustafsson had to make for the Minnesota Wild, but how much of this is self-inflicted wounds once again for this Seattle Kraken team? I don't want to get too worked up. We know that this team this season, there's limits to what is possible. So we know that, right? We know that for sure. But it's still disappointing. It's still disappointing to see these types of performances from the Seattle Kraken. And some of this has got to get figured out. You can have a bad game. No one's saying you can't have a bad game, but the amount of bad games, the way that the Seattle Kraken has been losing, and the fact that presumably they cannot learn some lessons, that's extremely tiresome. It's extremely tiresome. It doesn't give much. It doesn't give much confidence in what the future can hold for this team. Now we have to flush it, right? You have to flush this game. You move on, and we'll talk about what that's going to look like later in the season. But you also have to be honest. I want to see less of these games. I'm not saying they're not going to exist, but there has to be less of these games for the Seattle Kraken, and they haven't obviously, right, figured out how to mitigate some of what we're seeing. Quality start squandered. That getting Philipp Grubauer going is something that I want to see. But once again, Philipp Grubauer gets a quality start, and it's defensive lapses that end up biting the team. And, we have another loss for Philipp Grubauer. So I want to talk a little bit more about Philipp Grubauer coming up on today's episode. And, also, will some rest be able to be good for this team? I think indeed it will. We'll talk about all that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bare Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bare Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Philipp Grubauer, Wasn't able to get the win here. It's been a tough go for Philipp Grubauer. You heard me talk about that with Seth. And it just kind of continues here. An 889 save percentage in this game, 3 goals against allowed for this Minnesota team. 3 goals allowed against Philipp Grubauer. It was 4-0, but that was an empty net goal. So the struggles continue for Philipp Grubauer. This one's not on Philipp Grubauer though. It's just not. And I want to keep talking about Philipp Grubauer because figuring out what we're going to do with Philipp Grubauer seems like an important thing. We didn't hear from Philipp Grubauer as part of the Scrum Media Scrum post game. We heard from Jaden Schwartz. We heard from Jamie Alexiak. We heard, of course, from Dan Bilesma. I think Grubauer gave the team every opportunity to win this game. They didn't do it. So it's frustrating. I think it's frustrating within the context of this season. It's frustrating within the last stretch of games. We talked about that on an episode the other day, right? How many points they've collected in the last 10 games that they had played. There was a nice stretch, a nice vibe. The vibes were good. We were seeing some of the young guys step up. We have to continue to do that. We absolutely have to continue to do that. And, it's not happening right now. So it's also frustrating because we have a situation where, I'll put it this way. Let's start with just the situation overall. It's completely understandable if Philipp Grubauer, though he did, I believe, from what I know, take on the going through waivers, going down to Coachella Valley as a professional. I do think that he handled it professionally. But I also think from what we've heard from Philipp Grubauer, I've told you, we've heard from Philipp Grubauer, I guess, about three times in media scrums since coming back from Coachella Valley. In all 3 of those media availabilities, now some of this, let's just add the caveat that sometimes he's explicitly asked, what does it feel like now that you're back from Coachella Valley, yada, yada, yada. And he's had success, right? All 3 times, the very first response, he's made a point to say, when you don't have a go in 25 games, it makes it hard. He also admits that's his job. And he admits that it makes it hard. We talked about this multiple times on the podcast this season. I told you when I was in New Jersey, talking to some folks around the Seattle Kraken, Philipp Grubauer had that start against New Jersey. We talked about him maybe just above his glove side shoulder, there being exposure there. We also talked about how people at that time were noticing Gruby needs a rhythm. He needs starts. Did he earn consecutive starts? Let's be honest there as well. No. There was a time in the season where the answer was no. And as I mentioned with Seth on our 2-part Squadcast crossover episode ahead of yesterday's game, the Seattle Kraken waited way too long to figure out and to decide to waive Philipp Grubauer and to move him and give him that air quotes, right, for those listening on audio, that air quotes reset. I can only read the tea leaves here. And it seems like the future of Philipp Grubauer and thus the future of goaltending for the Seattle Kraken is not in a good way. And I don't like that. We've had uncertainty in goaltending every single year. We had the Chris Drieger injury. Philipp Grubauer's been out. I love talking about Martin Jones and how he needs to get more respect put on his name for what he did for the Seattle Kraken en route to the playoffs. Yes, Philipp Grubauer was amazing in the playoffs. Martin Jones was amazing for the Seattle Kraken in the regular season to even get us in a position where we could shoot for the play. Remember that season when Ron Francis Ronnie Francis was, kind of having this conversation. The team was having this conversation. Like, do you believe in this roster or not? Of course, I'm paraphrasing. I don't think that's exactly what he said, but in my mind, that's what he said. Do you believe in the Kraken or not? Right? The story that we were being told around that time is that the conversation between the front office and the roster was that we believe in this team. We want to go at the playoffs with this team, with this roster. And they made the run. They did it. I kind of alluded to this earlier because I thought it was a fantastic question that was apparently, according to our Locked On Predators, Sistren, it was a question being asked by Nashville. Hey, before the trade deadline, do you believe in this team, in what we have right now? If not, let us know and we'll figure some things out. We'll have a conversation. They want folks that are with the team. I don't know if those conversations were had with Seattle. I kind of hope they were, though. Just given the performance that we've seen, some of the players that we've seen get a quote unquote reset, right? Including Philipp Grubauer. But what are the answers? What are the answers here? And how much, like with the Grubauer situation, how much does Grubauer believe in this team? How much does the team believe in Grubauer? And by the team, I mean really front office more so. I don't know the answer. It seems like it's a rocky situation. But I guess question of the day, how do you see the Grubauer situation ending? I don't see it ending particularly well. But I also don't exactly know what the solution is. And I think we're going to have to wait for this season to end until next month, right? Middle of next month, to start to get signs as to how the organization moves on. But I'd love to hear from you. I asked you about fair or foul with the hit. A lot of our YouTubers think it was fair, but I don't have my Blue Sky account up, but we do have another fan and listener that says foul. And I completely get both sides. I really, really do. Because again, even if we go back to the 32 thoughts and the reporting that, the Seattle Kraken aren't on the same page, from the owners to the front office to the coaching staff, I said then, and I'm starting to believe even more now that there was something to that. Maybe it wasn't exactly as it was reported. And just because people are maybe misaligned, I don't think it's always like this sinister, them, us versus them. I mean, sometimes you just have communication lapses, things that you thought were going to be aren't, and you have to readjust. And sometimes the planning, the timeline, the understanding of the new focus, the new goal, the new path forward, you have to reconnect on those things. So I don't know exactly what was going on there. It just feels to me like there is a world in which miscommunication exists with the Seattle Kraken organization. And that's something that has to get sorted, right? And the Philipp Grubauer situation just stands out to me. So, another quality start for Gruby. He doesn't get the win. The Seattle Kraken don't get the win. And it's a shutout where Gruby, was in net for 3 of those 4 goals. But, I mean, pucks are bouncing off defenders. We're leaving guys open as they attack the net. What do you expect from a goaltender when that kind of stuff is happening? So once again, although Philipp Grubauer, you can have a conversation about how he's played this season for sure. I just don't know that the game against Minnesota, if you want to go there, is your best argument. I'll put it that way. So another quality start squandered. Moving on, though, the Seattle Kraken, I think, need to step away from the ice, and they'll have a little bit of a break in their schedule. That's something that we heard from Jaden Schwartz. So we'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. March Madness is definitely here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
And thanks as always for making Locked on Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here. Tough loss for the Seattle Kraken, but they'll have some time to reset. Like I'll have to reset my voice, excuse me. And, no game today, Thursday, no game tomorrow on Friday. They'll be on the road taking on Edmonton and then also have Calgary. So it's a bit of an extended and kind of clunky, segmented road trip here. But these are the moments, you hear it all the time, that the team can, kind of really get on the same page. They need that right about now. This is the time where the team can get to know each other. Of course, there's some new guys on the team, and how they deal with the adversity of how the Seattle Kraken is playing is important. And Jaden Schwartz talked about a little bit of that after the game.
You guys had some good early shifts, and then things unraveled a little bit. What happened in your eyes there?
Yeah, just tough start. Down 3-0 after one. I didn't think it was a bad period. We just a couple breakdowns and weren't checking our guys in the right spots and some weird bounces. But we've been playing good hockey up till then, and then they just kind of clogged it up and played good defense. We couldn't get much going.
Was there much said at that timeout that Dan called so early, or was it really more just for everybody to kind of catch there?
Just to take a breath. Reset a little bit. There was still a lot of hockey to be played. There was time for us to come back. So just take a breath, try to get to our game, get our feet moving a little bit.
You guys have a couple days now before you see Edmonton. Can you, with your teammates, sort of reinforce the idea that you guys are playing pretty good hockey and forget this one and move on?
Yeah, we have been. We got to be sharp every night. Teams are fighting for a lot right now. They're very important games. So we got a couple days to rest. Get a practice in, which we haven't got a lot of practice lately. So sharpen up a little bit there, look at some stuff, but keep building here.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So that's what Jaden had to say after the game, and that's ultimately what we need to see. Well, anyway, hopefully some time on the road together will be time well spent. I'm sure they'll go back and forth to Seattle for a little bit, but it was a nice run for this Seattle Kraken team. As disappointing as the quickness and the swiftness of the goals was, you take it for what it is. Glad that Grubauer at least still got a that Grubauer still got a quality start. But I really want to see the team be able to figure that out. I know I keep talking about it, but it's making me uneasy going into this off season. But again, the Seattle Kraken have some games coming up. I'll show them here on the screen for those watching on YouTube. Hey, YouTubers. But you can see March here. We've got Edmonton and Calgary. Then we see Edmonton and Dallas 2 times to close out the month of March. And then it is, what do we got? 5 games on the road in April before ending the season hosting the LA Kings. So on tomorrow's episode, it should be Zaiem actually taking over the microphone. Glad to have Zaiem back again, played that post-game reaction from Zaiem, and glad he'll be contributing. And you can catch me, if you want, over on Locked On NHL on Saturday for the Women's Hockey Report. We're getting close to Women's Worlds, so surely we'll be talking about that. PWHL standings are certainly interesting. And, we're still trying to line up some fun interviews for y'all. So stay tuned. That's on the Locked On NHL channel. But you know what we do. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. And hold fast. Stay true and loud and proud. We say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.